Look at any classical painting of Princess Andromeda, and you'll see a perfectly composed woman waiting patiently on a rock while a sea monster approaches. The reality of being chained to a cliff face by the sea is a lot louder and much more terrifying. She was screaming her head off while a slimy, barnacle-covered sea serpent took its sweet time thrashing in the waves, maximizing her panic before breakfast. She didn't end up on that rock by accident. Her mother made the mistake of loudly bragging that Andromeda was more beautiful than the immortal Nereid sea nymphs. To make matters worse, her parents were simultaneously trying to force her to marry her pirate uncle, who was threatening their ports with an army of cutthroats. When word of that boast reached the sea god Poseidon, he was furious. He sent the monster to ravage the coast, and her parents quickly decided that chaining their teenage daughter to a rock as a sacrifice was the easiest way to solve both their divine and political problems at once. Deliverance finally arrived out of the clouds, but it wasn't exactly graceful. A man wearing winged sandals appeared, looking more like an amateur tossed by the winds than a legendary savior. And instead of swooping down to immediately slice up the beast, this flyer, the hero Perseus, plonked himself safely on the beach next to Andromeda's parents. While the monster kept thrashing, Perseus took the time to negotiate a marriage dowry in exchange for the rescue. Once the deal was struck, he fluttered out over the water, awkwardly swiping his sword this way and that until he finally managed to drive the blade through the serpent's neck. Perseus had the shiny sword and the magic footwear, but his approach to heroism was fiercely practical. He saw a problem, negotiated his price, and executed a messy, opportunistic kill. That night, over a beachside dinner of fried sea serpent, Perseus shared his resume with his new fiancée. He explained that his life began with a dire prophecy predicting he would kill his grandfather. To prevent this, the old king locked the infant Perseus and his mother in a wooden crate and dumped them into the Aegean Sea. They survived, but later a jealous king sent Perseus on a suicide mission to retrieve Medusa's head. Athena cursed Medusa, turning her hair into writhing snakes, ensuring any man who looked directly at her face instantly turned to solid stone. Perseus knew a frontal assault was useless. Using a bronze shield provided by Athena, he navigated Medusa's cave entirely by tracking her polished reflection, creeping backward until he could deliver a single, blind strike to remove her head. He stashed the weapon in a magic goatskin bag.
Back on his flight home, blown wildly off course, he ran into the giant Atlas, who aggressively tried to pummel him into the underworld. Perseus simply reached into his bag and pulled out the severed head. The giant's hair and beard rapidly solidified into dense forest. His massive body hardened into vast stretches of earth and rock, and his head grew into a towering mountain peak that forever holds up the sky. Perseus survived these encounters not because he was physically stronger than a giant or a gorgon, but because he gathered the right divine tools to violently exploit their specific weaknesses. Back on the beach with Andromeda, his tools were about to be tested again. Her pirate uncle Phineas, the one she was originally supposed to marry, crashed the celebration, forcefully demanding his bride. Phineas didn't come alone. He brought an entire army of cutthroats, who immediately clashed with Andromeda's royal bodyguards. Swords were drawn, and the beach turned into a frantic battlefield. Perseus fought wildly, cutting down pirates left and right, but his side was heavily outnumbered and taking heavy losses against the surge of armed men. Realizing he couldn't win a war of attrition, Perseus shouted for his allies to look away. He reached into his goatskin sack, pulled out Medusa's head by the snakes, and instantly petrified the entire attacking pirate army in their tracks. He didn't need to outfence 100 men. By deploying the absolute indiscriminate power of Medusa's curse, he completely bypassed the battlefield arithmetic and shut down a deadly political standoff with a single terrifying glance. With the pirates dealt with, it was time to leave. Perseus offered Andromeda a ride home, clinging to his back via his winged sandals. Having watched him flutter around like a dying moth earlier, she flatly refused. Fortunately, Perseus had a better option. When he killed Medusa, a magnificent winged horse named Pegasus had emerged directly from her severed neck. They mounted the creature together, leaving the turbulence far below as they rode smoothly across the sky, watching dolphins skip through the ocean surf. Yet all the magic items in the world couldn't protect Perseus forever. Years later, while competing in an athletic tournament, He threw a javelin that veered off course, striking and killing an old man in the crowd. The man was his grandfather, King Acrisius. The infant cast into the sea in a wooden box had grown up to fulfill the exact prophecy his grandfather had tried to avoid. You can slice the head off a Gorgon and wield the weapons of the gods, but no mortal outruns the trajectory of their own fate. Long after their mortal lives ended, the gods honored them by placing the entire cast of characters up into the night sky, freezing Andromeda, Perseus, and Pegasus as distinct constellations. We look up and see serene, glowing dots in the vastness of space. But behind those quiet stars is a messy, deeply human story about surviving terrifying monsters, navigating desperate politics, and facing an inescapable destiny.